armies, bombs, territories, defense, bullets, democracy, reinforcements. These are just words to understand war or armed conflicts. According to the United Nations Development Program, an armed conflict is a contested incompatibility that concerns government and territory where the use of armed force between two parties results in battle-related deaths. It happens regardless of the reasons or the intensity of this confrontation. No formal declaration of war or recognition of the situation is required. The biggest and most destructive war that happened in the world's history was World War II, lasting for 6 years from 1939 to 1945. It had a record of over 70 million fatalities. It involved all the great powers of the world, dividing it into Allied and Axis powers. It is the only war to have used nuclear weapons till date. Meanwhile, in the Philippines, one of the biggest wars was the Philippines-Marawi battle. After 5 months of battle, 369,196 individuals were displaced by the crisis. There were also reports with the numbers of 168 casualties from the government forces, 114 civilians, 270 unidentified individuals, and 924 from the rebel forces. Around 88 individuals were also reported missing by their relatives. Post-war effects can be felt on Marawi's agriculture. Agriculture suffered damages due to the destruction of agriculture and post-harvest machinery and equipment, including privately owned rice mill servicing. Around 70% of the city's economic activities were also from trading. There was massive loss of inventory, raw materials, goods, products, and equipment used in production to gunfighting and looting. With high numbers of casualties, deaths, and destructions, why do wars even happen? According to Occasion, there are 8 causes of war: economic gain, territorial gain, religion, nationalism, revenge, revolutionary war, and defensive war. Scholars trace war to human nature, biological instincts, frustration, fear and greed, and the existence of weapons and similar factors. With these wars happening, we must always remember that there are risks that may endanger welfare. There can be high numbers of death and injuries that can occur to both human and animal life. Nearby homes, buildings, and infrastructures may be destroyed. There could be environmental disturbances from the impact of violent warfares. There is a great chance of loss of animal habitats near the war's location. We also must consider the huge cost of physical damage brought by this conflict. Potential long-term health effects such as hearing loss, asthma, coronary heart disease, stroke, and diabetes may affect lives, as well as mental health risks such as anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder.
When it comes to armed conflicts, everyone is vulnerable and liable to be injured or killed when in the midst of one. In the Iraq War alone, according to the Iraq Family Health Survey, there were an estimated of 104,000 to 223,000 violent deaths. In the World War I, there were an estimated of 15 to 22 million deaths. Though the majority of these deaths are from normal and healthy people, those who are impaired, disabled either physically or mentally, are more vulnerable than those without disabilities when it comes to armed conflicts. Cities are also very vulnerable to armed conflicts, infrastructures, and economies. In the 30 Years' War in 1618, the Swedish armies by themselves destroyed 2,000 castles, 18,000 villages, 1,500 towns in Germany, which is about a third of all Germany's towns at that time. This was done by the Swedish armies using matchlock rifles, swords, pikes, and cannons. The hazards of armed conflicts comes from their use of highly destructive weapons such as guns, ranging from pistols to assault rifles and Gatling guns, to explosives such as grenades, flashbangs, and rockets, to biological weapons such as mustard gas. There's also the biggest vulnerability and hazards of armed conflicts, which is nuclear weapons. Worldwide, there are an estimated of 13,425 nuclear weapons. The exposure of armed conflicts is also very destructive and violent. There are also exposures that aren't as destructive but are just as damaging when you look at their effects. The obvious exposures are from fired bullets, stray bullets, explosions, and radiation from nuclear weapons. There is non-obvious exposure, which is loud noises from armed conflicts. 31.3% of veterans who have served in the Iraq and Afghanistan war reported that they have hearing impairments due to the war. Veterans also reported having difficulty in listening. Not only has loud noises affected veterans, it also affected the nature and environment, with reports stating that in World War II, aerial warfare had an enormous negative influence on the wildlife population due to excessive noise pollution. There's also the exposure of ionizing radiation. An example being China's nuclear tests fallout, causing deaths to about 190,000. USA's nuclear test radiation also have reportedly contaminated the near water supplies, and also the cows within the vicinity.
Given all the risk and hazard assessments being discussed, now you would want to know how we won't end up seeing ourselves dwell in these dangers. Let's talk about prevention. It is the international relationship that is mostly being taken care of by national leaders to avoid conflicts that are bad enough to ignite armed conflicts, such as war. To simply put, it's the government's responsibility to ensure mandatory efforts are done to sustain good relationships and avoid delinquencies or negligence. The implementation of an effective mitigation system is also under their concern. It is their duty to ensure that people have a proper armed conflict survival plan to get informed and guided. Now, this is where the call of citizens' efforts come in. Just like any other survival plan, there should be a list of essentials that are stocked up, such as food, medicine, water, and handy tools such as any device that can remotely connect you to information and updates. Chemical protection gear and tools that can assist in moving heavy debris are highly recommended. And at the very least, individuals must be responsible enough to keep themselves posted in case there would be an upcoming war or perhaps an armed attack. Generally, keep yourselves aware of what's happening around you. Moreover, we must take the initiative to have ourselves familiar with the implemented disaster plan in our country. This familiarization should include evacuation site locations, technical use for chemical protective gear, and generally the underlying laws that are related to the disaster.
Now, what do we do during an armed conflict? You must evacuate. An evacuation order is used when the public must leave the area for your own safety. You must leave all of your items when evacuating. Only bring your emergency kit and your mobile phones. You must leave all of your items when evacuating. Only bring your emergency kit and your mobile phones. With the use of your prepared news receiving tool or gadget, you must stay informed. Ensure you are monitoring the alerts so you are always up to date with the latest information. Secure your safety. Look over children, elderly, and PWDs, but make sure to protect yourself first. And most importantly, do not separate from other evacuees unless instructed. Always attach yourself where other evacuees are also located. Evacuation and rescue will be faster if located in groups.
When you have gained cell phone signal or internet connection, make sure to contact Philippine Red Cross Emergency Response Unit.
Armed Forces of the Philippines, Philippines National Emergency Hotline, National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council, Department of Interior and Local Government, Philippine National Police, Philippine Coast Guard, and Bureau of Fire Protection. When the war is declared over or when there is no more violent disruptions have been occurring for days, make sure to find a safe place to stay and check in with your command. After a disaster or emergency, your safety is what is most important. Make sure that you and your family members are safe and accounted for. If family members are missing, seek help from a local government unit or first responders. And when everything is at place and location has been secured for you, remember to replenish whatever was been used or finished in your emergency kit.
Remember, armed conflicts are usually man-made. It is upon our hands to prevent and stop armed conflicts. We must remember all precautionary measures that were explained earlier. This is for the safety of the country, countrymen, and animal welfare.
Peace may be a simple 5-letter word for us civilians, but peace is an essential factor in making all countries and organizations connected and in good relationships. Peace among us, among organizations, and among countries.